Hey, HopeQuest family, Troy and Melissa here, and I hope that you are having a great week. We are having a wonderful weekend.
We are.
As you can see, we're sitting down, not standing up.
Much to my chagrin.
And we're in front of the fire because we've had this incredible, crazy polar vortex in mid-May. It's literally almost freezing outside. And, I was so cold this weekend, sweetheart. I wanted to shout out to my number one favorite daughter. # global warming is real. Love you, sweetie. So anyway, mid-May and it's freezing. So here we are. One thing you and I, we know a lot about, because much again to your chagrin, is conflict. And we've been talking about the last 3 weeks on dealing with conflict. And the first week we talked about why conflict is so incredibly hard and distressing for us.
Absolutely.
And then we talked about last week, we talked about our natural survival responses that, by the way, are unhelpful.
Often very unhelpful.
They help us survive if a bear's attacking us. They do not help us resolve conflict and connect.
Right.
That's fight, flight, and freeze. I'm the fighter. She's the flighter. And we've both been known to freeze.
Yes, truly.
I just kind of just go into despair and give up. So that's the last 2 weeks, and I encourage you, if you've not seen those episodes, to watch the last 2 weeks of Hope for Today. But today we are getting to the good stuff, because today we're going to talk about helpful responses to resolve conflict. Because the goal of the goal of conflict is not necessarily to resolve it, but we want to resolve conflict. The goal of resolving conflict is what, Melissa? Connection. We want to connect together. So we're going to talk today about how we can resolve conflict in a way that doesn't necessarily lead to one winning and one losing.
Correct.
Or even some sort of truce or stalemate where we end up like North and South Korea. But an actual resolution that leads us to be connected at the end. So our approach to resolving conflict is called what, Melissa?
Well, it's called collaborating.
Collaborating. Okay.
So I think this is really, really important, because so often in conflict, and we've talked about this before on previous podcasts, we see each other as the enemy.
Yes.
Right? And so once someone has been relegated to the role of enemy, there is no resolving conflict. Right? This is a win, do or die situation. Right. And so it's not about connection at that point. Right. Our brain is reading each other as threats. That it's not about loving or caring for each other or connection. So it's really important going into life and marriage is that we have a collaborative stance towards each other. Like, we're in this together. We're on the same team. This is not about me being wrong or right. This is not about you winning or losing. We are fighting for the right thing, which is to stay connected in a world that really tries to tear us apart.
So it's okay to fight, but we have to fight the right enemies, and we have to fight the right battles, and the right battle is the battle to stay connected.
Correct.
Love that. So here's my, I love definition. So here's my definition of collaborate. To work jointly on an activity, especially to create something good. Remember, we're going to work jointly on this conflict together, and the goal is to stay connected and to love one another well. And if we'll keep that goal in mind, we can actually walk through a small process, and in the end, the conflict can be resolved, and more importantly than even the conflict being resolved, we can end up connected.
Correct.
So, sweetheart, tell us, how on earth are we to collaborate together?
Well, I think the first thing is, it's really important to know that we are going to get triggered or taken off guard, and conflict is going to come for us without any anticipation.
Right.
It's rare that we can anticipate a conflict is going to happen. I mean, I remember times where I got a ticket or I did something I knew you might be unhappy with that I could anticipate and feel the dread of what was coming. But normally, we're just doing life, and all of a sudden, boom, you're upset, I'm scared, and here we go.
Right.
So it's really important to remember that I've got to get clarity in those moments. What is really happening? You've got to get clarity in that moment. We've got to get curious about each other's hearts. Time out, pause, what's happening? Tell me what's going on. Tell me what you're feeling, so that we can actually get clarity about what is causing the distress.
Because to me, one of my go-tos in conflict is I automatically assume what's motivating you. I assume what your motives are. I assume what your thoughts are. I assume what your goal is. And by the way, most all of those assumptions are negative.
Yes, because I'm a horrible, bad person in those
correct.
moments.
That's correct. It's amazing how a sweet, wonderful, awesome wife can, in my mind, become mean and cruel.
Right.
When I don't know that you've ever been mean or cruel, even the slightest moment of your life. Sorry about that, sweetheart.
It's okay, babe.
So getting clarity, like Melissa said, press that stop button. Don't judge. We've talked about this before in a previous conflict. In fact, we'll maybe link it below. But don't judge. Don't come to conclusions. Listen for that underlying emotion, because if we can get clarity, if we can see what's really happening, what's really going on in one another's hearts, that can lead us to the next step.
Which is having compassion. Right? Because, and this is so scriptural, right? The Bible says if your enemy hurts you, turn the other cheek. Right? And how much more for your life partner or someone that you care about, that instead of immediately taking a defensive stance, you get curious and then have compassion. Something's really hard for my person that I love right now. Right? So he's frustrated or she's scared. And having compassion for that onboards my empathy and my ability to want to connect, to put myself in your shoes, and that automatically kind of diffuses the anger and the really big negative emotions.
I know it helps me to kind of press that pause and get clarity, because when I have clarity, now I can see your perspective. And when I can see your perspective, it does allow me the opportunity to actually have compassion on your perspective and to realize, you know what, Troy, you're being a jerk here. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Or, Troy, you're really, it just is not cool. Have compassion. And helping see your perspective really helps me with that. It's hard to stop in the middle of this. And we'll talk about in a moment, what happens when all this snowballs and you end up at the end and you've still had a big fight. But clarity first, then compassion, and then what's next, Melissa?
Then we can talk about it. Because once my emotions are back in normal ranges, right? If I'm angry to a 10, there is no compassion happening. I'm in full fight mode. But if I can get some empathy and have some compassion for the situation, then I can take a deep breath. And now my prefrontal cortex is back online. We can talk about it. We can reason together. What's happening underneath all of this? Can I understand why you're so angry? Can I understand why that was so hurtful? And then begin to dialogue about our different perspectives, what's happening in each of us, so that we can actually connect around the emotion. Not problem solving or thought or what's happening with our thinking, but more connecting around the emotion of it all.
Because to me, when we are able to communicate, now I can focus on our relationship instead of resolving the conflict or winning or those sort of things that I tend to focus on in conflict. But now I can focus on the relationship as we talk together. Let me ask this question real quick. Is it ever too late to communicate in a fight? Is it ever too late to let this step be something that kind of comes to the forefront? Is it ever too late to talk?
I don't think it's ever too late to talk. I think we can choose the wrong time to talk.
Okay.
Usually late at night is not a good time to talk because everyone's tired. If there's still a level of anger or fear that's pretty extreme, it's not a good time to talk.
So it's okay to kind of take a time out and kind of say, hey, let's resolve this. Let's take a 30-minute time out, or let's resolve this later on. But the bottom line is we're going to seek clarity, we're going to have compassion, and then we're going to communicate. Yes. And then that leads us to the last point.
Which is your favorite word, not. It's compromise. And, that word has a lot of negative connotations for people, sweetheart. When I say compromise, what happens in you?
Well, it's like a tie, and everybody knows games don't end in ties. Ties are wrong. Ties, I mean, there has to be winners and losers. There just has to be, sweetheart.
Okay, we'll just ask Jesus if that's true.
Okay.
But compromise it's really not about deciding who's right or wrong. The compromise is, I want to make sure you're okay, right? So I love you, and I want to make sure that you're really okay.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. Like, okay, so you're talking about placating me and making sure that I'm okay and my perspective wins?
No, I'm talking about you're okay, you feel heard, you feel seen, you feel valued.
So can we use a different word there?
Sure.
Instead of okay, because okay sounds like you're just going to kind of make sure I'm placated and calm down and such. I'd rather use the word loved, make sure I'm loved. Because to me, when we talk about compromise, we talk about loving one another well. And what does that mean to you, sweetheart?
Well, that means that no matter what's happened in us, we both walk away from this conversation feeling heard, seen, valued, and important to each other.
Okay. Yeah, and when we really seek, when the goal of conflict is in the end to love one another well, now we can avoid the need to be right or wrong. We can avoid the need to make sure the other person is okay, but we're going to love one another well. We're going to come together. And again, compromise, again, it feels dirty to me because there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser. But really what compromise, here's compromise. Compromise is the relationship wins. So there is a winner, and the winner is the relationship.
Well said.
Thank you. I'm glad I've thought of that. Because when we focus on resolving conflict, and in the end we can come together and we can compromise by loving one another well, then the thing that matters most, which is the relationship, wins, and that's a good thing.
Amen.
So, sweetheart, bring us home here in our fight to overcome conflict. Real quick, talk to us about, sometimes we just blow right through all of these stop signs. There's no clarity, there's no compassion, there's no communication, there's no compromise. And in the end, it's just a total train wreck mess fight. What are we supposed to make of those sort of times?
Well, the good news is we're pros at this too. Right?
That's true.
So it's hard for us sometimes to catch the train. And so at the end of the day, it's not shame on us if we get caught in this cascade of emotions. We're human.
Right.
It happens. We get stuck sometimes, or we've had a bad day, or there are other circumstances. So the goal then is really just to take time to repair. Right. The win is in not leaving it unspoken. The win is in just not sweeping under the carpet or going along like nothing ever happened.
Right.
But the win is, this really wasn't okay. I hurt you, you hurt me. Can we talk about it?
So what I hear you saying is it's possible to kind of come on the back end and do a conflict postmortem
Yes.
and to really kind of walk through this process even after it's over, so that in the end we still end up at this place of compromise, and really where we end up is a place of connection.
Absolutely.
So that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
And it better be okay because that's real life.
Yeah, we end up there a lot.
Absolutely.
So sweetheart, any last words on conflict?
So I just say, like we're just talking about, conflict is not a problem in your marriage, right? Every relationship has conflict. Yes. It's not a bad marriage if you have conflict. It's a bad marriage or a bad relationship if you don't resolve conflict and you don't attempt to repair and stay connected in the relationship. So don't be afraid of conflict. I know for a lot of us it's really scary, especially for me.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's afraid of conflict in this relationship.
And I like conflict because it's a chance for me to win.
Correct, or feel powerful or strong or safe, right? So not being afraid, but really striving to understand if we have this problem in our relationship, there is hope for resolving it. And to stay connected so that we come out on the other side more connected, more loved, stronger in our faith in God and each other, and living life the way God intended.
So let me encourage you, next time you have conflict, to just take a few moments, just to pause and say, instead of conflict, can we collaborate? Can we work on this together? And if you'll follow those 4 steps, clarity, compassion, communication, and compromise, in the end, there can be a winner, and that winner is your relationship. We're grateful for you. We're grateful for your prayers and your support. If you would take below and like this video, that would be a huge help to us. Just today, everybody, take the time to like this video. If you watch it to the end, like the video. Also, share this video with others. There are others that you know that are struggling with conflict, that need help resolving conflict, that are stuck in conflict. Share this with them. This will be a huge encouragement and help to them, and it will be a huge encouragement to Melissa and I. We are grateful for you, and we are so grateful that you come and hang out with us every week on Hope for Today. Thanks, and have a great week.